Hi and welcome back. With this lesson, we start working on the JavaScript part of the project. We're going to write many lines of code, so please be very attentive. Okay, let's start. I've already attached the folder to this lesson. First, you need to download it. Inside of the folder called Sounds, you will find the files with the sounds of all musical notes which we need to use for our virtual piano. For each musical note, we have 7 octaves. That's why for the musical note A, we have 7 different files with names from A1 to A7. Then comes the file with the name AS1. The letter A is the name of the musical note. The small letter S stands for the word sharp. The number 1 indicates that it is the first octave. So this is the file for the musical note A sharp of the first octave. And this is the file for the musical note C of the 7th octave. This is the file for the musical note C sharp of the 4th octave. Alright, I hope you've got the idea. So let's copy this folder. Since we already have the sounds folder in our project, we just need to replace the content of this folder. Then go to Visual Studio Code. Great. Now we have all the necessary files for the musical notes. As I've already mentioned in one of the previous lessons, we're going to generate piano keys with the help of JavaScript. So it's time to do this. For this purpose, we're going to create a function called createKey. This function will serve for the creation of only one key. Later on, we will use this function to generate all the necessary keys for our piano. So to create one key, we need to know whether it is a white or a black key. So the first argument of this function is type. Also, we need to know the musical note. So the second argument is note. And the third argument is the octave of this musical note. Previously in HTML, for each key we used the button tag. That's why to create the button tag in JavaScript, we type in letKey equals to document.createElement button. As you can see, every button has 2 classes. The first class is called piano key, and this class has both white and black keys. The second class is either piano key white for white keys or the class piano key black for black keys. To set the class name, we type in key.className. Since we need to insert the type of the key in the class name, we will use the template string. To do this, we need to use backticks. The first class is called piano key. For the second class, we type in piano key. And then, to insert the type of the key, we add the $sign and a pair of curly brackets with the argument called type. As you can see, all white keys have 2 characters. For example, this white key has the text C2, which means it is the musical note C of the 2nd octave. All the black keys have 3 characters. For instance, C sharp of the 2nd octave. We need to somehow store this data for each key. To do this, we will use dataset. If you need to refresh your knowledge on the dataset property, you can read it here. So we type in key.dataset, and then let's call a data attribute letterNote. Then for the white keys, we need to insert the argument called note plus the argument called octave. For the black keys, we need to insert the value of the note argument plus the sharp sign and the octave. Let's use the ternary operator. So we type in if type equals to white, then note plus octave. Otherwise, it has to be note plus sharp sign and plus octave. But as you can see, we don't have the sharp sign in the names of the files. In the names of the files, instead of the sharp sign, we use the letter S. So to match this part of the code with the names of the files, let's create another data attribute. Let's call it letterNote file name. Then copy this part of the code and paste it here. And replace the sharp sign with the small letter S. Now we need to set the text content for our key. It is the value of key.dataset.letterNote. Finally, we type in return key so that we can use the result of this function in other functions. Now, by using this function, we can generate all keys of our piano. To do this, let's create a function called init, which is a shorthand of the word initialization. This function will be called every time when we open the project. As a result, all the piano keys will be created. To understand how many keys we need to create, let's count how many octaves we have. Overall, we have 5 octaves. Each octave has 7 musical notes. That's why we need to use 2 for loops. The first loop is for octaves. So we type in from I equals to 0 to I equals to less than the number 5. Since each octave has 7 musical notes, we create a second for loop. From J equals to 0 to J less than 7. To create a key, we call the createKey function. This function has 3 arguments. The type of the key is white. The second argument is the musical note of this key. So that we can insert different musical notes, let's create a variable called piano notes. In this variable, we're going to store all the musical notes. Of course, it is an array with musical notes such as C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. So we need to create a musical note which has the index number J. As the third argument, we need to specify the octave of the musical note. So we type in the letter I. Now we need to insert the value of this key in this div with the class name Piano Keyboard. First, we search for this div by its class name. Second, we type in keyboard.appendChildKey. Let's check whether our code works or not. Before we do this, let's turn these lines of code into a comment. And right here, we need to call the init function. Okay, save all the changes in the HTML and in the JavaScript files and refresh the page. Excellent. The keys have been created. But we see the text C0, then C1, and so on, which is not correct. So to fix this, we replace 0 with 1. And then here we change to including the number 5. Now it's correct. C1, D1, E1. Then C2, C3, and so on. Great. We have already created all the white keys. Next, let's create all the black keys. I'm just reminding you that overall we have 7 musical notes. So we need to create a black key when it is the first and the second musical note. Also when it is the fourth, fifth, and sixth musical note. In other words, when it is not the third and not the seventh musical note, we need to create a black key. So we type in if j doesn't equal to the index number 2. You may ask, why is it the index number 2? Let me explain. The index numbers of j start from 0 to 7, not including. It means that we have such indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the third musical note is stored in the array with the index number 2, right? Then we add that j doesn't have to be equal to the index number 6, which means it is not the seventh musical note. So if this statement is true, we need to create a black key. Copy this line of code and paste it here. The keyword let should only be used when we create a variable, but we have already created the variable called key before. That's why here we delete the let keyword. Also, we replace the word white with the word black. I would like to draw your attention to one very important thing. In HTML, we inserted the black key inside of the div with a class called empty space. So we need to create this div. To do this, we type in let empty space equals to document.createElement div. And we set the class name empty space. Now we insert this key into the div. So we type in empty space dot append child key. Finally, let's insert this inside of our piano keyboard. So keyboard.append child empty space. Save it and let's check it out. Wow, that looks awesome. The white keys, the black keys, we've successfully created all keys with the help of JavaScript. It's time to say that's all for this lesson. See you in the next one. Bye bye.